All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Learning from the Legends session. I am Brady McGrath-Kong, Membership Manager with the National Auctioneers Association. Thank you for joining us. Learning from the Legends is a free educational series produced by the NAA to share the professional experience and knowledge of some of the association's foremost experts and industry veterans. We're excited today to be joined by Randy Ruhter. Randy began his career in 1967. Since that time, he's conducted numerous successful auctions across Nebraska and throughout the United States, with a special emphasis on land sales. He has also held a real estate broker's license in Nebraska since 1984. Randy is the founder of Ruhter Auctions, which is celebrating 50 years in the business this year. He is also a past president of the Nebraska Auctioneers Association and was inducted into the state's Hall of Fame in 2015. He previously served on the NAA Board of Directors and the National Auctioneers Foundation Board of Trustees and was inducted into the NAA's Hall of Fame in 2008. Thank you for joining us today, Randy.
Good morning.
Randy, now that you have over 50 years in the business behind you, what are some of the things you did in the beginning of your career that has helped make you successful?
Well, I think probably one of the most obvious things was to get a desire to even enter the profession. And I guess that began at an early age, as my dad was a cattle buyer and an order buyer and a cattle feeder. And so I spent a lot of my youth riding with him to auctions across the Midwest and listening to some really high caliber auctioneers. And that was kind of how the bug got started. And also having an auctioneer as a neighbor and being invited to work the ring for him gave me a taste of the auction industry that just really got me pushed over the edge wanting to become an auctioneer. And so I guess that's how it had its humble beginnings. And even though I did never go to auction school, was given a chance to work with him and eventually shared the mic with him. And 50 years later, we're still doing it.
Now, it sounds like you found some of the mentors in your father and in your neighbor, and we know that from experience, many auctioneers attribute their longevity in the auction profession to building strong relationships. What are some things that you did with your mentor or, at the very beginning of your career that helped make you successful? You mentioned working the ring. Was there anything else you did to really put yourself out there to get known?
I think one of the key things that lend itself to development of my career, my dad and this neighboring auctioneer decided to start a consignment auction along with my grandfather's farm equipment, and we wound up doing that for about 35 years, and it evolved into one of probably the larger farm equipment auctions for sure in the Midwest, a one-day auction, and probably the nation, because we would have as high as 13 to 15 sets of auctioneers all selling at the same time, 5,000 people in attendance and probably 1,000 consigners. And so, that gave us a lot of exposure into the auction business and got my face and our faces out to the public to where they knew who we were. And I think that gave a real leg up. That consignment auction gave us a reputation of being able to handle large auctions and do it fairly and consistently.
Now, unfortunately, failure is an inevitable part of any business, and all auctioneers have stories about when things have gone wrong. What are some lessons or stories you've learned during challenging times at auction?
Well, I think the real key to success, of course, is exposure of the auction. And one of the most crucial things is getting the advertising done on a farm equipment auction. And I guess we've never made a mistake that we know of, but I've always been very conscious of the fact that you only get one shot to help our clients through the auction, because you can't go back and redo it the next day. And so advertising and planning and procedures are so important to make that day click. And I guess probably didn't learn from one of my mistakes, but I've watched some other people make what I felt were mistakes, and henceforth wound up with maybe not as successful an auction as they could have had they covered all the bases.
You helped build a very successful auction company that included many team members. What are some tips you can give to new auctioneers as they look for work with potential clients or employers?
For new auctioneers, I would say, first of all, get to a good auction school, even though I did not. I'm kind of self-taught because I had so much exposure to it and did a lot of practicing on my own. But I think it's key that you get to a good, bona fide, recognized auction school and get that behind you, and then try to apply those things out in the community. But I think the key is to maybe not bail into the auction business on your own just because you received that diploma, because and graduating from auction school does not make you an auctioneer. There's a lot more to it than what you learned in those 10 days or a week or whatever that school lasts. There's a lot of practical things you need to learn. And so I believe you have to hook up with somebody, unless you happen to have just a little niche that you're going to do that you know all the ins and outs of. But I think it's key that you hook up with another auction company, and I think it's also key to success that you hook up with the right auction company. And that might have been one of the mistakes that I made. I was invited into the industry by this neighbor, but they were not at all interested in any innovative things in technology or anything like that. So once I got my taste of the auction business, my wife Barb and I finally decided that we could take the auction business to another level if we just branched out and opened our own company and then started applying things like computerized clerking and creative advertising and websites and all that stuff that we all use on a regular basis now. And them being 30 years my senior, they had no interest in doing any of that. So I think it's key that you, when you identify the auction company that you would like to work with or get to work with, make sure there's someone who wants to employ all of the new technology and somebody that really rocks and rolls and can help you train yourself in that type of programs.
What are some of the specific skills or traits that you think make a successful auctioneer?
Well, I think I think you got to wear several hats, I guess. One of them, of course, is develop your technique and your chat. That's what everybody looks at and judges you by. But you have to, first of all, be conscientious, because, like I said earlier, you only get one chance to service that client. Usually, they only do one auction, and if you don't do it right and have a successful auction, you've changed the way those people are going to live the rest of their lives. So you got to be real detail oriented. I think you also have to be a people person, someone that can visit with anybody no matter what their mood is. You'll wind up with people that are really having a tough time because of the auction. There's not a whole lot of good reasons for an auction. Very few people will ever say, this is the best day of my life, because normally there's a reason for it. It could be financial, it could be a divorce, it could be health reasons, or just plain, become of an age that you can no longer do what you did. Like in the case of a farmer, they would love to farm till they're 100 years old, but now all of a sudden they can't. And so it's a stressful time. So you really need to be able to deal with those things. And I think you need to be about halfway a counselor to lead them through that, because they are going through a lot of stress when you're working with them.
Auctioneers are notoriously very passionate about what they do. And so one of my favorite things is to find out what made you fall in love with auctions. So what is your favorite thing about being an auctioneer?
Well, I think probably the most rewarding thing is to take that husband and wife or that company owner that has made the decision that they need to liquidate, whether it's real estate or whether it's equipment or just personal property, industrial inventory, and bring that to auction date with having had a huge response to the advertising, a huge crowd at the auction, um, and then converting those assets that they've worked all their life for, accumulated some wealth that you have to, in a very short period of time, maybe 2, 3, 4 hours, convert all of their assets into cash that, for them to have for the rest of their life, and being able to sit down with those folks on the day that you're settling up with them and hand them a check that is probably larger than they anticipated. It doesn't always happen that way, but I think that's the most fulfilling, probably, thing about the whole business is the day that you sit down with them and say, okay, we all know that we had a good auction, but here's the results. And watching those people weigh that out and know that you did a good job has always been very satisfying to me. That's just kind of the culmination of maybe 30 to 45 days of work.
You've been an NAA member for 40 years. How has your involvement in the association helped shape your auction career, both with the NAA and with the Nebraska Auctioneers Association?
Well, to answer that, I guess probably our slogan for our company has always been the auction standard since 1967. And by that, I mean, we believe that we were first on the scene with computer clerking, cashiering, that type of thing. We had one of the very first really workable websites for an auction company in the Midwest, and just really have always been on the forefront. And there's only one way that we could do that, and that was continually going back to auction conventions, whether it's state or national. But the national had done such a great job of exposing us to that on an annual basis through the trade show and such that we could come back home and implement some of these things into our business, and you can watch the other auction companies, the neighboring auction companies that aren't attending those conventions, try to keep up. You know, it's very satisfying. You know, they always say the highest sign of form of flattery is copying what you're doing. So I think that's been the key. The Auctioneers Association, the National Auctioneers Association, is a tremendous organization for a young auctioneer that's trying to get his feet wet. And there's such a sharing of ideas, either in the classroom or in the hallway, that we actually, I consider myself a thief because I stole so many things from members while we were standing in the halls of the convention. So.
And as a past president of Nebraska and as a past board member with the NAA, how important is it to get involved in a volunteer role with an association?
Well, for me, it was paramount. You know, there's some people who don't like to be involved in that type of thing, and I thought maybe I was one of those persons. But way back when, I guess we were in Lexington, Kentucky, I walked into a room and it was the farm, or I think it was the Ag Council. At the time they had the councils, and I sat down. There weren't very many people in the room, and before I knew what I was doing, I was on the board or on that committee. So you walk through an open door and say, "What's this all about?" And an hour later, you know. But that was kind of the start for me. I started to see how the wheels work in the NAA. Got my feet wet there and served. I think 4 or 5 years on that Ag Council, and wound up as chairman of that in a couple of years, and just really enjoyed working with the people that were on those committees. And someone asked me if I would be interested in running for the board of directors. So after some prayerful consideration, my wife and I decided that might be a good thing, and so I did, and was successful in San Diego and served 3-year term on the board. Very satisfying because present company accepted that those people that serve in those positions, I think, are the cream of the crop. They're the movers and the shakers. They're the guys that can help you with new ideas and bring you a little bit higher level. So the 3 years on that board were well paid for. I was well rewarded for those 3 years, and since then went through on the National Auctioneers Foundation and served as chairman of that. And same thing, just high end people, motivated people that have nothing but the best for the auction profession. They're always stepping up to the plate.
And is there anything else you'd like to share with our members, Randy?
Oh, I think that having recently sold our company, which I did 3 years ago, it's good to see the auction business is changing tremendously, and the last few years that I ran this company, I began to see that as hard as I tried, there were things were happening so fast, so far as technology. I was never an advocate for online only auctions, because I'm a bid caller. I thought that's what the auction business would always and needed to always be. I have since then decided maybe that was not the case, and we were so blessed to find two young Christian people that are family men that were interested in our company, that had been working for us, that were interested in taking over the helm, and we just felt it was time for us to step back. And it was a great choice, because I see new things happening with our company that probably would have never happened had we remained at the helm. And so I'm still working for them, and enjoy every day of it. But I can tell in 3 years, our company has changed, and it was a change that needed to be made. And a stuffer like me probably wouldn't have made that choice if I had to learn all the ins and outs of the auction, the online auctions and all that. So the auction business will never quite look like it did in the 1970s and 80s, but it's always going to be a great business.
We couldn't agree more. Thank you so much, Randy.
Yeah, hope that's what you needed.
Yes. Before we end today's session, a couple of closing notes. We'll be back next month with a new installment in the Learning from the Legends series. You can watch past sessions at auctioneers.org/legends. Thanks again for taking part in NLA's Learning from the Legends. We'll see you next month.